Okay, so we got the Puppetmaster, and the funny thing is, I was talking to Rob, I think it was like the end of season 1 or something like that. I think we were talking about the moon thing, with the moon being blocked, and would that really stop all the water bending, if water bending was real, and I said, well, that doesn't explain the biggest hole in the whole thing, which is that if they can really water bend, they should be able to move anyone, because the majority of our bodies are made out of water. And Rob sort of went, wait for it. And he just gave a little wink at, like, just wait for it. And obviously this is the episode he was talking about. So I'm not used to this. I'm not used to something not making sense or not adding up, and it will be explained. I think this comes from reviewing movies, so that when something is over, it's over. So this idea that stuff will be explained, I'm curious if this came from people writing notes or saying, hey, what about this? Or if this actually was planned from the very beginning. Most of it probably was planned from the very beginning. Some of it, they got notes on, like the foaming mouth guy. It's like, bring him back! So, okay, so you got this episode. This is an episode where they come across this waterbender in the Fire Kingdom, and she's been manipulating people when it's full moon, and she becomes her most powerful, and she can blood bend, which is what a great name for it. And it's sort of like this taboo, I guess. You're not supposed to do it because it's just too powerful. Maybe they don't quite... I don't want to say they don't go into why specifically, because you see this woman go crazy, but I do sort of say, well, okay, if one crazy person... I mean, I get it. I mean, the message came through, but it's also sort of like, we are at war. I don't know. You side with her, even though she's nuts, a little too much to totally say, well, yeah, it's not a bad idea, or that's a bad idea, where the other side doesn't make as strong an argument. They just sort of say it's wrong, and that's it. And it gets its point across well enough, but it could have done it a touch stronger. Just making her nuts and a psychotic, I don't think is enough. I mean, usually that stuff is. It's like, well, look at what it did to this crazy person, but this is a little bit more, there's a little bit more wiggle room here, I think they could have addressed. But regardless, so this woman is taking people and keeping them, like, imprisoned and barely feeding them, I think, and pretty much treating them the way she was treated when she was a prisoner of the Fire Nation, which was also a very effective flashback. I love the part where it shows all the waterbenders disappearing and she's still fighting, and slowly she just stops and you circle around and see she's totally surrounded by the soldiers. I thought it was a pretty effective shot. And it's very obvious this is a good episode, and it's a very dark episode, and it's the closest one. All of this is obviously very anime style, but this is the closest one I was watching, and I had to remind myself I wasn't watching an anime episode, particularly when it cut to a flashback of the first season. I realized somewhere there must have been a switch, or they did something different with the animation, because, like, the first episode that they cut to, the colors were so bright and so vibrant, and they so stood out against the backgrounds, that's more American. Anime, they sort of blend in a little bit more with the backgrounds, like the line work and the color work. It's sort of like here, like, you can tell this is background, but I don't stand out that much in front of it. You can tell I'm in my environment. And anime very much usually likes to do that. It usually likes to make it look like they're very much in their environment, as opposed to stand out from their environment to make them more visually appealing. So it's, give or take, different styles. But this one, they really, really mixed it in, and probably because of the darks and the shadows and the grays and stuff like that. It's very effective, and it's a very dark episode, and, of course, there's a lot of dark elements, but this is definitely very, the angles they get, and sort of the psychotic lady, and like I said, a lot of it's at night during, like, the full moon and stuff, and it even starts off with a ghost story. And the funny thing is, I'm watching it, and I'm saying to myself, they obviously wanted to go dark, this is one of the few instances where maybe because it's a show for children as well as adults, they couldn't go as dark as they wanted to. I mean, just say that blood bending. Think about what you could do with this. And think about the ending as well. Katara finally has to do a little bit in order to save her friends, who she's gonna force to kill themselves, and she saves them by stopping the lady pretty much. And the lady's like, haha, my job is done, you have officially become a bloodbender, muhahaha, and Katara's, oh no, and cries, and is this really that bad? What happened? I mean, she stopped someone from... she controlled someone's body to stop her from killing 2 other people. Now, if she fucking blew her up. If she just... Because honestly, when I heard bloodbending, that's the first thing I felt like, oh, so you can just make a person's head explode if you wanted. I'm thinking, but it's Avatar, you can't do that, but if you're gonna go this dark, I mean, that's sort of the only way around it I can see. And granted, they try their hardest to make the bloodbending, like, disturbing, like the actual and unnatural, the way they actually do the movements, and they even add sound effects, almost like you can hear the blood flowing through the bodies and the crinking, I mean, it looks like something like out of The Exorcist or The Ring or something. I mean, you want to see him like crawling backwards or something and sped up. So it looks very unnatural, which is good and creepy. But if they really wanted to get the message they wanted to get out in this at the end, which is Katara has this ability in her, and there's some point where she'll have to be forced to do it as well, and there is no extreme, this is never right. At some point, you know, there's going to be an exception to the rule, and it really eats her up inside. She had to do something worse than this. This isn't even bad, what she did at the end. So I got it. I mean, the point got across, and it's still a good episode, and it's still effective. It's effectively creepy. It shows good arguments to both sides of the argument, of the debate, but I still... Even though she's insane, I still kind of side a little bit more with the philosophy of the crazy lady, and I don't think that's the point it wants to get across. Well, if anything, it probably wants to get across that as much as we don't want to deal with certain elements, as much as we want to say it's never right to do this, it's never right to do that, there will never be a time to do it, there will never be a time to do that, chances are... again, that there are most likely going to be exceptions to the rule. And that's a tough thing to deal with. I just... somewhere in there's like this really friggin' brilliant, oh my god, can't sleep at night story here. But it couldn't quite be brought out, I think, because it is Nickelodeon. It is a cartoon for children as well as adults. And, I mean... okay, I'm kind of amazed they could... again, I'm amazed they can get away with what they have so far, and they could do it as professionally as they have. But this is one of those elements where, okay, you want to dabble with this, and it's effective. But it could have been more effective. Maybe a little bit more suggesting what she did to other people, or even the rats, or something like that. Maybe at some point she did kill with them. I mean, the idea of keeping them alive and just starving them... well, okay, just starving them, I mean, okay, that's a nasty thing to do, but... and it does tie into doing, like, what they did to her in the prison, so it makes sense just to keep them alive, just barely alive. But if you really want to go into, like, the real evils of this, you kind of gotta go all the way, but... I understand you can't, and you couldn't. That does raise the question whether or not this should have been done then in this manner. I think it's okay to sort of look at it like, hey, this is a taboo thing, but they don't go quite enough into it. It's more hinted at why it shouldn't be done and why it is too much power. So I don't know. It's a good episode. I mean, it's by no means bad. It is good and it's effective and it gets the point across just enough. But again, it's a tough position to be in. It's if you can't do this idea all the way, do you do it at all? And that's a difficult compromise, especially in a family show, especially on a show like this, which is, I mean, in my opinion, just push the envelope on what family shows can do and get away with. So, yeah, still good. I mean, I'm glad I watched it. I mean, I don't think it's by any means filler. I think it's important to address this because I was sort of questioning that. Like, oh, well, why couldn't they do this? Why couldn't they do that? But something very important, I was going to bring this up in the last one, is that you got... And again, this is sort of what family shows can get away with. But just something really good should be able to get away with either. I think Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, guy who wrote Sherlock Holmes, he had sort of an interesting quote about this too. I think it's him. Don't quote me on that quote. But he was talking about how the details never quite fascinated him. His thing was the major story and the characters and the core focus and so on. And by the time this comes out, I probably will have released the Nostalgia Critic on it already, and it's about nitpicking when it's right and when it's wrong. And I think it's the same thing here, where if you're focusing that much on this, the show's probably not doing its job right, or you probably focus on this too much if you do it for everything and you can enjoy it. But, yeah, with Avatar, I mean, I don't know, there's probably a couple dozen other instances where I'm like, where I could probably say, well, why didn't they use the waterbending here? Why couldn't the earthbending do this? Well, wait, if earthbending can move mountains and canyons, how could the Fire Nation, this should be over in a minute. It's like, a lot of the stuff I'm saying, wait a minute, how is this possible? But it's not a problem, because the emotion is there, and the stories are there, and that is what the focus is supposed to be. So, I like the fact that they are addressing these details, they are addressing these issues that, probably a fair amount of people would bring up, but again, seeing how it's a family show, also meant for children wouldn't bring it up as much. And I like that when they bring up these elements like, why not bloodbending, or is this possible, it's not as much, hey, we're explaining this because you're going to call and say, hey, why not this? They're explaining it because it's introducing a new idea that you may not have thought of, or younger audiences may not have thought of. And I really enjoy that. I like when it sort of says, hey, we're going to throw us in there, but not because you're a nitpicking dweeb or something. We're throwing it in because it's an interesting idea, and we want to explore it a little bit. So that's a sign of an interesting show, when you're not paying it, or interesting movie or anything, when you're not paying attention to the details, you're not being distracted by stuff that couldn't happen, but instead you're paying more attention to what can happen, and they can even surprise you with stuff you didn't even think could happen. And that's what's great fun about this show, and they constantly do over and over and over. So, yeah, sorry, that turned a little long-winded there. I know, me. But, yeah, so there it is. It's a good episode. I'm glad I saw great angles, great shadows and grays, and a nice palette of dark colors in this one, and, definitely interesting ideas going on here, and taboo ideas, and it explains why this war can't be done in 2 seconds with the Water Nation. So, just maybe could have been... No, if only it wasn't quite a family show. I guess I would have been interested to see what they could get away with, or what their original idea was, if this was not a family show. So, still good, still strong stuff. Yeah, and that's it for this one, and I'll see you in the next one.